everyone, it's Missy, and today I'm going to be canning some pizza sauce because as you can see I have lots of tomatoes. I got my plum tomatoes over here, and over on the other side of the counter I have my red tomatoes. And when I'm making pizza sauce I want to use the plum tomatoes, so we'll leave the red tomatoes alone. And to get ready I do have a couple lids on the stove. I'm going to preheat my lids. And then I have 2 jars that I have in my auto canner, and we're going to preheat those. And how you preheat the jars is you just close the lid of the canner, turn the handle so it's locked, select the preheat function, and then start. And then after 12 minutes the jars will be preheated. While they're preheating, I am preparing my tomatoes. I have my food mill set up and I am quartering the plum tomatoes and then I'm putting them in the hopper of my food mill. Now, if you do not have a food mill, you can still make this recipe. You want to blanch the tomatoes in a pot of boiling water over the stove, and then you want to skin them. So like when you blanch them, the skin should start cracking, and then you peel the skins off with your fingers. And then you want to cut the tomatoes and de-seed and core them. And then you can take the rest of the tomato and put it in a food processor and puree them that way. But I find that the food mill is a very, very nifty tool because it saves so much work. It skins, de-seeds, and cores the tomatoes for me, so all I'm left with is the puree, which is what I want. So I really highly recommend that you guys check out this product if you don't have one. Like I said, I absolutely love mine and I find that I use it a lot. I have on mine a screen for tomatoes and applesauce, which is standard with any food strainer that I've found. You can also buy other attachments, so that way you get the salsa screen and the berry screen and the pumpkin screen. And I think you guys have seen the salsa screen and the berry screen in previous videos when I made salsa and blueberry syrup. But as you can see, all I'm doing is I'm turning the handle and I'm pressing the tomatoes into the food mill. When I'm turning that handle, there's a corkscrew that spins around in a circle, and that brings the tomatoes through the mill where it gets strained, the sauce is strained, and it slides down the chute into my glass bowl. Any leftover remaining skin or seeds or whatnot are going out that plastic tube in the back and dropping into the container, and I'll just take that out to my garden and compost it later on. But as you can see, the sauce is really looking nice, and I ended up doing 2 hopper loads of tomatoes to get my 6.5 cups of puree. Now that I have my puree, I am dumping half of it, which is 3¼ cups of puree, into my jam and jelly maker. And this is really slick, guys, because the jam and jelly maker stirs the puree for you. No more standing over the stove. I just love this recipe because of this. It's so simple. All you do is you click the jam function, and then you want to click that plus button because we need to increase the time it cooks to 25 minutes. When it says 25, you can select enter, and it will start stirring and cooking away. And then we'll wait for the 4-minute warning to add the rest of the puree. Okay, so it's been 4 minutes, and you want to add the rest of the puree slowly. I think I did about 2/3 cup at a time, and I probably should have added it a little bit slower. You guys can't hear this on the video, but when the 4-minute warning happened, I could hear the tomato sauce cooking. You got this sizzling noise. And then I would just add in enough puree until I heard the sizzling kind of start to diminish. And then I would wait to hear the sizzling come back up, like that noise get louder, before I added the rest of the puree. And you want to take your time with this because you don't want to cool your mixture down completely where it has to heat up again. You want to keep that mixture hot and cooking during this entire time. But you don't want to go so slow that you never get done. But like I said, about 2/3 cup, maybe half a cup half a cup, 2/3 of a cup I was doing at a time. And you want to spread out the puree around the top. I was dumping it in one spot in the beginning and that was not working too well. But once you finally finished adding in all the puree, you also want to add a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. And this will help add extra acidity to the recipe so it's safer to can. And then you want to add 1 teaspoon of dried oregano. And you just want to make sure when you're adding this stuff, you're spreading it evenly over the top of the jam and jelly maker. For our other spices, we are adding 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. I also have 1/2 teaspoon of salt, just regular iodized salt. It doesn't have to be pickling salt. And then lastly, I'm adding 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. And that's it for the spices. I mean, this recipe is really simple and it's really easy to do. And then you want to make sure that you add the cover on to the unit and it will finish cooking. We have 19 minutes left. Okay, so my sauce is done and I'm going to take the cover off. And right away my camera fogged up so you guys can't see it, but it looks good, it smells awesome. You want to remove the stir. I'm using a cloth so I don't burn my fingers. Now that you guys can see the sauce, you can see where it boiled up to on the pot. It didn't like overflow or anything like that. But I did scrape down the sides with a scraper. And now I'm ladling them into my canning supplies. And I just want to tell you guys, make sure you have your canning supplies ready to go right when the unit shuts off. Because when the jam and jelly maker quits, the heat source, it shuts off. It's still hot, but it's not like still cooking. So you want to make sure that you work pretty fast with this. Like I said, the recipe yields 2 pints. And then also don't use a metal ladle. I got a black plastic ladle that I'm using. You do not want to scratch the nonstick coating on your jam and jelly maker, because once that coating is ruined, you will have burned bits in your stuff. So make sure that you get a plastic ladle or something that isn't going to scrape or scratch the jam and jelly maker. I'm filling my jar so there is a 1/2 inch headspace. And then when I have it filled, I'm just going to take a wooden skewer and I'm going to go around the edges just to make sure that there's no bubbles trapped down there. And of course, when you do this, you always have to readjust your headspace. So I measure my headspace with this ball tool. It makes it really nifty handy. You can also kind of go by the rim on the jar, whether it's 1/2 inch or so forth. I had to readjust my headspace here, and you can see where the level is. It's kind of on that rim, but I like to be perfect, so I'm always using this tool so that way I can measure, and that turned out to be perfect. You want to take a damp cloth and wipe the rim of the jar. A clean rim allows the lid to adhere to it a lot better. Like I said, I have my preheated lid, so I'm just taking and centering that on the jar, pressing down. And then I will take a rim and I'll screw it on so it's fingertip tight. Once I have this done, I'll return it to the canner and I'll get my next jar and fill. And when I have all my jars filled, we're ready to can. So on this recipe, I'm selecting sauces and number 3 and start. And then after 55 minutes, we'll have canned pizza sauce. And that was it. It was so easy. And I really love this recipe. The sauce looks great. But if you guys have any questions or comments, please leave me a comment below. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.